Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Jeff Mosher's here. You just heard Jeffrey Lurie in that opener there say, I will do everything possible. That was at the end of a season, a bad season. Well, here we are a couple seasons later since he said that. He spoke yesterday about the state of the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll get Jeff Mosher's take on a couple of the things that stood out to me. But first, before we get there, Jeff Mosher back for another edition of Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com. What's going on, Moshe? How are you, brother?
I'm good, Mike. I'm very excited. Tomorrow's opening day. You know, I'm fired up for that. I've actually just kind of, taking a break from Eagles for a second to think about the lineup that the Phillies should have tomorrow. Had some interesting thoughts on that and, ready to go. And obviously you got owners meetings going on. So what a great time. And, I'm a UConn Huskies fan. So got the trifecta right now.
Everything's rolling. Who's going to hit in the 4-hole with Hoskins out?
Yeah, that's a good question. Assuming Trey Turner is your leadoff hitter, which I think he is, batting righty. Then you get the lefty Schwarber batting second. Then I think you want the righty Real Muto batting third, and probably Derek Hall, if he's in the lineup, and I hope he is, batting cleanup there.
I would imagine he is against DeGrom tomorrow.
Yeah, I would think so. The big question is, do you put Jake Cave in left field and give Schwarber DH, or do you put Schwarbs in left field, and then what do you do with DH? Now, I personally would play Alec Boehm there for the opening day and then get Sosa in the field because I want my best 9, right, against DeGrom, and I think that is your best 9. But we'll see if Cave gets the opening day start in left field and Schwarb is the DH. I don't know what their plans are.
All right, that's tomorrow, but let's get down to business with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jeff Lurie last night spoke for about a half hour at the owners' meetings. A couple things that I thought really stood out, and one, the team's commitment to Jalen Hurts. I mean, it really showed Jalen Hurts and the relationship with the front office. It doesn't seem that this team is shying away at all for the praise that they have given this guy. And I guess the question off of everything that has been said, you have Sirianni calling him Michael Jordan. You had Howie Roseman essentially saying, hey, we want this guy, yada, yada. And then what Lurie said last night, there is no part of this organization that is being non-transparent. When do they start and when does something get done for Jalen Hurts here?
Well, the talks begin, already. And I'm sure there have been discussions. Now, again, how far down the road, you never know, but frameworks, concepts, a lot of times, I'm sure at the Combine there was discussions. It's more not number. Well, I'm sure numbers are involved, but this the kind of thing starts with, well, what are you thinking? What are we thinking? Where are we short? Where can we make things meet? Sometimes there are incentives. Sometimes there are other things that players ask for that can sweeten a deal, how their families take care of. Oh, there's 1,000 different things that can factor into the negotiations of a quarterback's contract. Without knowing what Nicole Lynn, Jalen Hurts' agent, has in mind or what Jalen has in mind, there is the obvious part of the fact that Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert also are up for extensions, and there's some sense into waiting if you're Jalen Hurts to see what they get to help sort of define what the market is for a guy who's coming off of an MVP caliber season.
I want to get your opinion on this. We had this discussion this morning regarding the amount of money that Jalen Hurts is going to get. Any part of you say, hey, we're giving you $50 million a season here. We got to scale you back offensively. Or do you give the guy $50 million based on how he played to get the $50 million and say, if he runs around 10, he averaged over 10 carries per game. Do you want a guy making $50 million playing quarterback to run 10 times per game?
If it's part of the offense and it's working, then yeah. I mean, I think that they would rather have him designed run 10 times a game instead of scrambling 10 times a game where it's a little bit more impromptu and the ability to get hit there is a little bit more common. But I think that they understand what their offense is and what Jalen Hurts is, and that there's always going to be a risk of when you have a quarterback running that the quarterback could get hurt. But I I have conversations with this a lot with people. If you go through every single NFL team last year that had a quarterback who got hurt, there were tons of, and when I say hurt, it could just be you missed a week or two, right? There almost at least 60%, if not more, of the starting quarterbacks in the league last year got hurt and missed either a game or two, if not more. There are certain divisions where you look at it, like take the AFC East, right? I mean, and Josh Allen didn't miss any games, but he played for a while with that elbow injury, right? Tua, we know he was out all the time. The quarterback for the Patriots, Mac Jones, missed a couple of games. Zappe had to play. And we know that the Jets played about 3 or 4 different quarterbacks last year. So that's just one division right there. And none of those quarterbacks are really considered runners other than Josh Allen, right? He's the mobile one. So whether you're running or not, quarterbacks get hurt in this league. So to answer your question, you pay somebody $50 million, you're not expecting them to do less than what they've done. In fact, in some regards, when you pay someone $50 million, you ask more from them. Look at Aaron Rodgers. They finally gave him $50 million and then put him with 3 receivers who had never played before. I mean, I'm kidding. Lazard played before, but he obviously felt the effects of a team around him not being as good as he had been on in years past.
Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, football at 4. Another kind of thing that stood out is, a couple of years ago when Roseman said, hey, they went to the Super Bowl and they did some things that they wouldn't normally do. Roseman said that he kind of acknowledged that they signed some older players, but he said because they're still good. But does that – you know what I'm saying? Like they went that road before because they thought those players were still good and that they still had a window. And Roseman admitted that. We thought we had this window. We did some things we wouldn't normally do. Lurie's kind of admitting that we're doing some things that we wouldn't normally do, but he's trying to say because they're still good players. So have they gone out of their comfort zone here?
I don't think so. And I'm not yet convinced that they're repeating any kind of mistakes, right? I mean, in 2018, they were a really good roster. They just were besieged by injuries, and they seem to have, with their medical staff now, have done a much better job controlling like all those soft tissue injuries they used to have, and then Carson got hurt himself at the end of the year as well. And 2019, they did make the playoffs with that final great month. Maybe there were some mistakes there. 2020, the only mistake was that they had waited too long, right, to start turning over the roster a little bit, and then obviously left themselves. And then, of course, and I think Howie Roseman mentioned this, obviously Carson regressed to a point where nobody could have really predicted that. And I'm not sure you can predict precipitous regression from anybody, let alone even Jalen Hurts here. So the idea is to put together the best possible team you can put together. The offense is still pretty young and still pretty nasty. It should be, right? Defense, you got 2 cornerbacks who are a little bit older, but if they let both of those guys go and tried to replace them with younger, well, then maybe you're too young. I mean, they've been down that road before, right? With young corners and getting beat a lot. So they're obviously trying to strike a balance here. I don't think they're out of their comfort zone. It's probably more in their comfort zone. I think the biggest challenge that they face, though, Mike, is that their big draft is really next year, right? It's when they get the 11 or 12 picks. So this year, though, they only have 5 picks, but you really got to start to replenish this year because this is the year you're pay Jalen Hurts, right? You have great draft picks next year. You can't really expect that these guys are going to hit their prime until 25, 26. So for the next 2 years, are you good enough right now with your personnel to still be competitive until those draft picks next year really start to come into their own? That's the big question for them.
Right. Geoff Mosher's here. What did you make of, I don't know, was he giving like a backhanded slap at Doug Peterson with the whole coaching thing? Like, there's no nepotism here. We did a lot of deep diving. We went outside the organization. We interviewed every candidate we could find. I mean, was that his way to be like, well, that's why Doug got fired, because he didn't want to open up and expand the search?
There might have been some, what would they call it? If you did it on Twitter, it would be called subtweeting. I don't know what in a press conference, what you'd call it. But I do think, though, that there's some truth behind what Howie's saying. I think first of all, look at all they still. What's today? Today is March 29th. Have the Eagles announced their coaching staff yet?
Not the full thing, no.
No, which is unbelievable. I don't know if any other team.
Well, they have 8 defensive back coaches, but no quality control coach.
Right. I mean, you cannot listen. One of my biggest criticisms of the Eagles throughout the Doug Peterson era, even before that and after that, is you cannot legitimize having like 8 wide receivers coaches in 8 years, 6 defensive line coaches in 5 years. You know, the way it says a lot about your vetting process. You know, if you're firing guys year after year after year of the same position. So I would criticize their vetting process. They would always say, well, you would get from the team, well, we thought this guy was this. We thought this guy was that. He's not this. Joe Banner, we've talked to 1,000 times. He always says, if you realize you made a mistake, you got to cut bait, you know, even if it's after a year. And I would say, yeah, that's fine. But what happens when you're doing it 5, 6, 7 years in a row? Eventually, you got to question your vetting process and what you're finding out about these candidates. So I can't sit here and knock them now for taking their time to find the linebackers coach, the secondary coach. I mean, it is stretching out a little long here, but if that's their process, that they're diligent, that they're exhaustive, that they do as much research as possible, then I can't knock it, because the old way for them at certain positions was not working.
Right. And he kind of said that, like, he thinks that digging, paying these coaches and interviewing assistant coaches gives them like some sort of an advantage, that they do take their time here, right? Like that they kind of don't rush into just saying, hey, I know this guy, he's the right coach.
That would theoretically be a good, that would be smart. Now, I think that in general, it's tough to find coaches because a lot of them are under contract. It's especially difficult for first-year coaches to do it. And if they can't take from their old staff, like Shane Steichen wasn't able to take anybody from the Eagles, then it's really difficult. But the one risk you have going this far and still looking for coaches is now, like, teams are solidified. No coaches aren't trying to leave in April. They're trying to get their jobs hammered down by February and March, get their new surroundings. So, I don't know. I think the only thing the Eagles have left is a defensive quality control coach to fill. But if they're taking a lot of time and really, scouring the landscape and trying to find the one person who's available and also fits the description, then kudos to them.
Well, he also, and he talked about, speaking of coaches, that they were very fearful of losing Brian Johnson this offseason. And, for the relationship he has with Jalen Hurts. But, I guess take us a little deeper and further into who Brian Johnson is and what he might add to this offense, because Shane Steichen was so good as a coordinator, he got a head coaching job. That's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing to remember is that, and Nick Sirianni said it at the Combine, he said, Brian Johnson's a really good coach. He's been a play caller before at the college level, so that helps. But the one thing that everybody has to understand about the offense, and I don't think he meant this as a bragging, I think he was just trying to be explanatory, is that it's his offense. It's Nick Sirianni's offense. He has a lot of input on the offense, and he said, I was hired to this team to have an influence on the offense because I was an offensive coordinator. So what I expect from Brian Johnson,
who had a lot of suitors this offseason.
Yes. So what I would expect from Brian Johnson is to step into this role and add his sort of spin to the offense that we won't know until we see it. But it's not going to be, in my mind, a radically different offense. I think conceptually, RPO centric. I think that'll all stay the same. Route concepts will mostly be the same. And how they go about their pass run ratio, I think, will mostly be the same. Again, there might be some slight differences. We might say, hey, you know what? Looks like Jalen Hurts is throwing to the running back a little bit more, not just a dump off, but maybe there's routes now being incorporated for Kenny Gainwell that we didn't see a year ago. And we could say that might be something that Brian Johnson brought to the offense. But until then, it's really, in my mind, going to look very similar to what you saw last year.
Yeah, and then one of the other things I thought did stand out, because I'm wondering what happens here, is it didn't seem that Jeff Lurie wanted to talk a lot about the facilities where they did not get good grades. You wonder, when you're over at Lincoln Financial Field this year, are we going to see an upheaval inside that place and getting this place a little fancier?
Most people I talk to who play for the Eagles, Mike, are not critical of the facilities. Maybe the indoor bubble has been an issue for quite a while. And I thought, I've lost track of this. I thought there were plans to expand or refurbish the bubble or tear it down and build a new one that had a better surface on it. Because obviously, if you're someone who's had knee injuries, you just don't want to be practicing on that surface. Brian Westbrook would never practice on the indoor bubble. I remember that. So I could see that being a little bit of an issue. And yeah, the NovaCare complex was beautiful and pristine when it was built, over 20 years ago, but I don't know that it's really been enhanced all that much. I know they've changed the inside, with the sports science and the locker room. The gym does look small, but I don't really have – not the gym, the workout area. I think that's where they got low marks for how big that area is. You walk by it and you could say, yeah, you could probably see more high-tech ones with the newer stadiums and the newer facilities. But it's not like Jeffrey Lurie to fall that far behind either. So I wouldn't be surprised if something was done about that.
All right. And then the last couple things here with Jeff Mosher, we're going to see the Kelly Greens. But are we going to see the Kelly Green helmets or the black helmets or both?
Probably both, I would imagine.
You think the NFL is going to give in here? I mean, I don't want the NFL to go all NBA here and have different – or Major League Baseball where they have a different uniform every day of the week.
Oh, so yeah. So you don't want that, but the NFL wants to make money.
Yeah, but the NFL has been so against it. Like, they have these rules in place that you can only have one alternate helmet. Like, why not say you can have as many helmets as you want? They've been the one league that's been like, nope, can't do it.
Yes. I also remember when the NFL was one of the leagues that would go to court every year to make sure that gambling was not pervasive in our sports landscape. And now they've got deals, mega million deals with every single sports book there is.
Yeah. And real quick, thoughts Thursday night. Now, we talked to John McMullen earlier. We're both trying to figure out. Now, they're not doing the flex scheduling on Thursday, ... yet. But teams now can play twice on Thursday night. So does that mean the good teams will now play twice on Thursdays, or will they give the bad teams 2 Thursday games?
Well, I don't think Amazon pushed for this so they could have more crappy games. So I'm thinking they want – listen, I mean, at some point, the NFL is going to be an 18-game schedule. We know that, right? And when that happens, it's pretty likely there'll be a second – bye week. Okay, I think that there'll be 2 bye weeks in an NFL season in the near future. And so I imagine if you're asking a team to play twice on a Thursday, that second bye week's going to go hand in hand with that kind of scheduling. And it wouldn't surprise me if you'll see some then division games being played on Thursday, because even crappy division games are better than crappy non-conference games.
True.
I think the issue last year, Mike, personally, was timing more so than saturation. I think last year we had this conversation a lot, right? There was like 4 or 5 good teams. There was the Bills, there was the Chiefs, there was the Eagles, and there was the Bengals. And then on any given week, you could get like a decent performance out of either Miami, or you could get a decent performance out of trying to think of Jacksonville, maybe the Chargers. But after that, you got meh. Like every other team was just meh, even if they were above 500. They just weren't that fun. And the games where the Steelers were not that fun to watch. They were 9-8. The Ravens were 10-7. They were not that fun to watch. So I think that you got to hope that some of these quarterbacks that are coming into the league now are going to be good, and it raises the level of play overall. So I just think that was more the issue than saturation of primetime games.
All right, Jeff Mosher, by the way, Phillies have made a trade.
Whoa.
You excited about this?
Yeah, definitely.
They have acquired center fielder Christian Pache from Oakland in exchange for Billy Sullivan. Now, Pache, a little bit of a surprise cut. He was cut by Oakland, and last year, he opened up eyes a little bit, had some power this spring. Not this spring. He got cut this spring. He had a little bit of power last year with the A's. Some people were surprised that he did not make the Oakland roster. In fact, there were some people claiming that, getting rid of a guy like him was bad for baseball, that the A's were a bad, getting rid of a guy who had, played for them, who was decent. And
yeah. Now, he's a center fielder by try. He can play center field, correct?
He is a center fielder, yes. And he's a right-handed batting center fielder.
Yeah, which they really needed, and I have to think to make room for him that Dalton
Reese
Guthrie,
Hoskins, by the way, has been put on the 60-day DL to put Pache on the 40-man.
Oh, okay. See, I thought maybe Dalton Guthrie. I still think there might be a corresponding move.
Probably.
I'm not sure you need Guthrie now, and then you may be able to send him down or get him off, and then put somebody else back on, maybe an infielder or a pitcher.
He had a good spring. He hit like over 300 in this spring, and a lot of people thought he was the best defensive center fielder in Oakland. I mean, very good outfielder. but we'll see if he ends up getting called right up and then starts a platoon. Not much of a hitter, by the way, but in his major league stops, but has been a very good outfielder, center fielder. But you're right, center field, yes.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff Mosher,
good stuff.
Inside the Birds podcast. The Intel with Greg Cosell is out. You could check that out. And, of course, we're less than a month to the NFL draft. We'll have a lot of Eagles NFL from here to then here on Football at 4. Moshe, appreciate it, bud.
All right, Mike, have a good one.
Yes, as always. And tomorrow, right here on Football at 4, we're already at Thursday tomorrow. We'll talk NFL draft. You guys know there's nobody better talking draft on Football at 4 than Andrew DeCecco. He'll be in the house tomorrow. We'll get his mindset as well.